Okay, so then I would ask, my follow-up is, do you find that there's a difference between breastfed parents and bottle-fed parents when it comes to sleep training? Does one or the other have ease, or is it kind of evened out?
It really depends. I feel like for moms who decide to breastfeed, sometimes it's just easier to nurse your child to sleep, and that makes it kind of harder for them to fall asleep independently. When babies are bottle feeding only, like they have to get up, get a bottle ready, then they feed the baby. It's kind of like it takes a little bit more time, so baby's not necessarily feeding to sleep, but it's not necessary because they are breastfeeding. It's just because it takes less time and the baby knows that the breast is available right away.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. What do you think is the appropriate age to start sleep training your kid?
Well, it really depends on when the family feels ready because this is a process that where you involve a consultant, like the consultant is there to help you and kind of like coach you, but the parents are doing all the work and it's exhausting. Like you know how being sleep deprived is and it just takes so much energy. With the methods I work with, like you're always comforting your baby. So the first few nights feel tough. So it depends on when do you feel ready to do it, and also it's about the expectations. Like babies as young as 3 months old might still need a feed, so I tell the parents like if you want to sleep train, that's great, your baby will sleep longer stretches and can fall asleep independently, but he might still need the 1 a.m. feed. And I'm not going to tell you not to feed your child. But for older babies who might be ready to sleep through the night, there might be a little bit more of tears involved just because they are so used to their routines and breaking habits is difficult. Even if you are offering support, they will resist the change.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So if you had to say, let's say, a sweet spot to start introducing like a bedtime routine and then maybe the early process of sleep training, around what age would you suggest based off of your experience?
So bedtime routine is something that you can start from week one. It's great because like baby knows what to expect. Like you can start with just like bath and a book and go to sleep. Babies kind of get used to a routine and they thrive with routines, which is great. So you can start introducing that as early as week number one. You can also work on resolving day-night confusion by exposing them to natural daylight and trying to have proper wake windows. And again, it's not strictly sleep training, but it sets a good foundation for whenever the baby's ready to sleep train.
Okay, that makes sense. And so, do you think that, early on, maybe when you're working with parents, something you identify as maybe there's not a bedtime routine like in place? Like what does that look like? What's a good bedtime routine?
I would say an average bedtime routine should take you anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. Bath sometimes is not part of the routine just because some parents can give their kids a bath every day and that's okay. So after that, you just do pajamas. I always recommend that if you do a feed, you do it as the first step of the routine so baby don't get used to like feeding to sleep. Books is really good. Even if they don't know what's going on, like they remember, like they see a book and they know like, you know what, it's bedtime. It's time for me to go to sleep. They might not create this association right away, but after some time, like they know and it just makes the process easier.
Oh, that makes sense. I noticed that at least before I started doing sleep training, it was just easier to get her to go to sleep when I fed her to sleep. But the problem that caused ended up kind of bottlenecking. She was having some stomach tummy issues, and so if she didn't burp, it made it 10 times worse. Like at a certain point in the day, it was just catching up, and then she would have like these gas attacks. So that's interesting. I got into like our version of sleep training. That is kind of like how I start my routine with her. I feed her and then we change her, give her like I'm gonna say like a light massage with like some Vaseline that's safe for kids, and then we read a book. She has kind of like her sleep sack on. We put that on, and then she knows it's time for bedtime. I'll take her into the room, then I sing to her for a little bit, and then I place her in the crib, and then she dozes off to sleep. So that has been working, I would say, the majority of the time. She's only 3 months
Mhm.
though. So if I had to give a grade, right, out of like 7 days, I'm going to say 5 out of 7 is really solid. The other two, we got a little fuss going on. So I don't know. Do you think that's something that just gets better with age, or is it just doing it consistently every day?
Yeah, I think consistency takes you places. Like as you mentioned before, I grew up with like an athlete mentality, and I think it applies to everything you want to do in life. Like if you do something consistently, like results will come. For some people it takes longer, and for some people it takes like less. But that's normal, right? Like not all babies are the same, and some get used to a routine like after 3 days, and some need more time. And I feel like that's part of the journey of parenthood, like figuring out who your child is and what do they need.